For everyone who's just joining, I started by saying kudos to everyone who's done the assignment and those who are attempting to do the assignment. I am well impressed just because of the level of the quality of the assignment. So I'm quite happy that a lot of people attempted and the quality is fab. I was quite surprised, pleasantly surprised at the level in which people attempted the assignment. So one of the assignments stood out for me, and the one that stood out for me, the only reason is that this person has included the requirement, the test case ID, and the priority. Not that other people didn't do this, but this one stood out for me, and I'm glad that you attempted it. So I have decided to, if you can see my screen, I've decided to use this one as a yardstick so that you will understand what I was expecting to see. Even for those who haven't done it, they can actually take 1 or 2 lessons from this. So my test scenarios that requirements that I sent, the requirement description basically says it shall be possible to load the gift treat via its Internet Explorer icon. And this person, the test scenario she gave for that is verify you can navigate to the gift treat web page, check that you can view the home page, verify. So what really stood out for me is the fact that for our test scenarios, the test scenarios here, she says verify. So you can either use verify that I can load the gift treat via the Internet Explorer icon, or you can say test that I can. So basically, when I explained to you last week, I said, if you need to explain your test scenarios will define what you want to test. Some other people did it, they just said, navigate to gift treat center. No, you need to verify, you need to test, because that's what we are testing. The thing with testing is the requirement is written in simple, plain English. Your test scenarios should be simple and plain as well. Or you can even say check. You can use 3 words. Verify that it is possible, or verify that the user can load the gift treat website via, or you can say check that, or you can say verify that, or you can say test that. If you use those 3 points, it's as simple as ABC. Anybody reading it would understand what you are trying to test. So you can either say test that, verify that, check that. It's still the same thing. So for this one, number 1, for example, if you say it shall be, that's my requirement, it shall be possible to load the gift treat via the Internet Explorer. Your test scenario should say test that a user, or test that it shall be possible, or test that I can load, or test that a user can load the gift treat website via the Internet Explorer icon. Now, I got a question during the week. Someone said, can I use another browser? Of course you can use another browser, and I didn't want to deviate. I just said stick to the requirements, because the requirements, we need to first of all test according to the requirements. And I remembered saying a tester should think outside the box. Of course, the main requirement here is the Internet Explorer. You can use another browser if you want to test by another browser, but your test specifically, we are testing specifically for the Internet Explorer. There's no point testing for Yahoo Explorer, what's it called? The other explorers, Safari, or the other browsers, if your Internet Explorer does not work. The Internet Explorer is the must-have here, as in is the priority 1 here. So that's what we are testing for, and that's the scenario I wanted to see. Now, for the home page, once you've logged into your Internet Explorer, you will be testing also that you view the home page, because as soon as you use your Internet Explorer, you go to the gift treat website, the first page you land is the landing page, which is the home page. And as soon as you can view that, then you'll be able to do other stuff on the home page. Register your register button, and register via the register button, and then you are able to log on after registration. So the steps were, what you wanted to test was just those 4 things. Test that you can log into the website via Internet Explorer, test that you can view the home page, test that you can view the registration button, and then you can register via that button, and then also you should be able to log in after you've registered. Of course, there will be processes that you would use to log in, but you need, before you log in, you have to be able to register. Now, the test cases also now, so now she's now put our scenarios beside the test cases. And the scenario number 1 says verify user can navigate to the gift rate. What are the steps to do that? Step 1, click on the icon, Internet Explorer icon. Step 2, navigate to giftrate.com. Then check user can view the home page. That's the test scenario. Like I said check, test, or verify. And then your steps to do that, to log into, to view the home page is what you write as your test cases. And of course, your expected results. The site should open. Home page should be visible. Register button should be visible. Then your actual results, these are all just the steps. Then your actual result is when you do it, what did you actually do when you physically log on? And I bet everybody who wrote their test cases must have tested. So your actual result would have been in this box to say log on successful, or GiftRead's website displayed successfully. Pass will be in that box. Home page, I can view the home page, or home page is visible. Pass in that box. Or let's say it failed, for example, it doesn't go to home page, it goes to another page. Home page not visible. Fail. Registration button. Navigate to the registration button, yes, and then of course you have to click the registration button to register. Then registration button is visible. Should be visible is the expected result. Is visible is the actual result. Pass or fail will be in that box. So I just want to say congratulations to everyone who's done it, and I'm really, really impressed, and that's why I said to show this, just in case you still don't understand. For those who haven't done it, this is a valid example for you to follow. So your scenarios will define what you actually want to test in this box with your test case ID. Remember, the test case ID is a way of tracing our requirement ID. So for every requirement, there's a test case ID. We might have a requirement and 2 test case IDs. 2 test cases for that. And of course, there will be 2 IDs. It might be the same test case, test ID. Maybe this one says 001. The next one might be 001.2 or something like that. So at least you know you can trace your requirements to your test cases. Right, so I need to go on to the lesson for today. And the lesson for today, let me look up my slide. So last week, we spoke about software testing and what software testing is last week. And I remembered defining software testing, web application testing, and I spoke a bit about the types of testing. I'm not sure I mentioned that, but anyway. But this week, I want us to concentrate more. So I've spoken a bit about the test cases. And last week, I remembered also sharing test case templates, which, of course, you can see from the previous video, from the previous spreadsheet that I showed you. So now I would continue with that, requirements traceability matrix. Now, from the spreadsheet, just have to navigate to the previous. From the previous spreadsheet that I showed you, which was the assignment, you can see that we had our requirements and then we had our test case IDs. Now, this is a vivid example of what I have done in the past, and I said to come and show you this. So I've got my requirements and I've got these areas. Now, the test that I was going to do, these are my requirements here, and I've labeled them requirements. Just like the one I showed you initially, TC001. So that's one requirement. This is another requirement. So all these highlighted are my requirements. And all these highlighted are my test cases. Now, requirement traceability means simply that you're just tracing your test cases your test cases to your requirements, or you can trace your requirements to your test cases. The only reason why we do this is because we want to make sure that we've done enough test coverage, that there's no test, no requirement that we don't have a test for. And in most cases we do this. There are some tools, some test management tools that can actually do the requirement traceability mapping for you. But some industries will do it, you have to do it by yourself, simply because it's either they don't have a test management tool. HPQC is quite expensive to purchase. Jira, I'm not sure you can do traceability matrix like this in Jira, and some other tools, but in most cases, most people will do it in Excel. And it's just tracing your requirements to your test cases. Say for example, this is my requirement ID1, PDW001. And the functional area for that, so it means I have different areas of testing. Say for example, I'm building a car. There are some test cases for my wheels, there are some test cases for my steering wheel, there are some test cases for my car seats, there are some test cases for my roof, and there are some test cases for my engine. So that's what I mean by functional area. I think the rule of thumb is just to make sure you are organized. And say, for example, the main switchboard area now, for example, within this example that I want to show you, main switchboards, we've got the main switchboard screen, and we've got the main switchboard button. So the button has got 4 tests here. Main switchboard screen has got 1 test. I bet it's just to validate that you can view it. And so that's the requirement for that. And for that, we've got the test case here. Then we've got the property development works. We've got 1 requirement, and we've got 1 test case ID here. So what we do, what I did in this case was to break them down into functional areas. So I can just look at this and go, oh, main switchboard, I've got 4 test cases, 1, 2, 3, 4. I've got 4 requirements here, and I've got 4 test cases. So it's 1-to-1 basically. Then republishment window is a lot. What you want to do is when you organize things like this, at the end of the day, you want to be able to say, so say for example, you started testing, and there's a lot of defects within the republishment window. Your regression testing, there's something called regression testing, I will explain to you later. Your regression testing would center around republishment window and everything that surrounds it. So you would not want, you just want to test the republishment window again because there's a lot of defect around there. So instead of looking through which one is republishment window, how would I know? The fact that you've labeled it like this, you just go in there, click, 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 and these are the tests that you're looking to test. Instead of just scouting through, but with this way of organizing your tests, you can actually just call, oh, these are the tests I want to do. And the only way you get your functional area is the main heading. What do you want to test? Which area is this? It depends. It might be the home screen. It might be the registration button. It might be the login page. So for login page, you group all your tests together. For the registration area, you group all your tests together. For the landing page or for the passwords, you group your tests together. So you are testing and you've organized your test case in such a way that anyone who sees it knows you are organized. And that's why I've done this like this. So you know how many test cases for this, how many test cases for the republishment area, how many test cases for the new window button, how many test cases for the republishment window, and which is quite different from the republishment window, which is quite different from this one as well. These are actually 3. And then the one new entry window, and then you've got the project details tab, and you've got the date tabs. So everything is well organized. By doing it like this, you're looking now at your requirements, and there's no requirement without a test. There's no requirement without a test. Yeah, with this, there's no requirement without a test. Now, you can actually just do a coverage matrix, for example. Oh, for my property development, for example, how many tests did I test? How many test scripts? 1. Main screen, how many test scripts? If I look back at that, it will tell you how many test scripts I'm doing for each functional area. Yeah? Okay. I just said to show you this. Don't worry too much about this one, but it's good to have to be able to trace your requirements to your test case, just in case they'll ask you what is test traceability matrix and how do you trace your test cases to your requirements. It's just a matter of mapping your test cases to your requirements, making sure that there's no requirement that you haven't covered, test coverage. So you've got your requirements, you have 2 test cases for this, you can imagine having a lot of requirements to do. Okay, so if we go back to what we were talking about, the test cases, I've discussed about the test cases and test case templates and the requirement traceability matrix, and of course the test coverage, why we do test coverage. But there's an interesting topic that I wanted to cover today, and without even going into the definition of test traceability matrix, I wanted to cover this SDLC, which means the Software Testing Development Life Cycle. So when we develop software, we don't develop software, we test software. When the developers developed a software, they have a life cycle that the software goes through in developing it. And at every stage of development, there is a testing going on. And that's why we have the software testing life cycle. Software testing life cycle is what we would deal with because we are test analysts. Software testing development lifecycle is what the developers will deal with because they are developers. However, we have test cases we have to test within that cycle. And that's why we should be bothered about the software development lifecycle, simply because there are test cases, there are tests that we have to do within that cycle. Now, without confusing you, I'll come back to that in a minute, and I know I've just spoken about software development lifecycle, software testing lifecycle. It will make sense when I get to the VModel and I show you the diagram with that. But at the moment, I want to discuss what is called the Waterfall Model. Last week, I remembered talking about some phases of testing, and I remembered saying the requirement gathering phase, analysis phase, design phase, coding phase, and the testing phase. So if you look at this diagram very well, the testing comes at the end. So with the waterfall, you would have gathered the requirements. The BA would gather the requirements with the business. The requirements will be given to the developer to analyze. The design will be designed by whoever does the designing, and then the coding before it gets to testing. Testing is where we come in. So it means all these processes would have gone through, they would have gone through all these processes before testing comes. And testing comes at the end. The disadvantage with this is that when we leave testing to the end, the defects can be costly for the organization. And that's the disadvantage of waterfall. Most organizations, a few organizations still does waterfall. It means they've developed the testing, they've developed the software, they've done everything. You might have 100 or 1,000 test cases, then you start testing, and that's when they start finding defects. And of course, it's expensive to fix at the time. And that's why these days, waterfall methodology, this is also a methodology, waterfall is fading. But some organizations still stick to waterfalls. And part of the problem with waterfalls is that testing starts after implementation is done. So supposing you're working on a large project, complex project, and then the details of the requirements, you can't even figure them out simply because you've not done any, for example, static testing. You've not read the requirements, you've not done anything All they've done is developed, as far as you are concerned, you the tester, you are now reading the requirement they put down, and you say, it's not right. You can't even say whether they've developed the right system, simply because you are testing at the end. And that's why in most cases, most people don't want to do waterfall. Now, there's another model now called the VModel. The diagram I showed to you earlier, I was talking about the software testing development life cycle. And this is the software development life cycle on this side, where my cursor is. Your coding, your low-level design, your high-level design, your system requirements, and your business requirements. Those are your software testing development life cycle. But your software testing life cycle is this. It means at the coding stage, there's a unit testing. These are all types of testing we'll come back to later. It means low-level design, we have functional testing. High-level design, we have integration testing. System requirements, we have system testing. And business requirements, we have acceptance testing. So for every stage of testing, every stage of development, there is a testing. We don't do unit testing. Manual testers will do functional testing, they will do system integration testing, they will do system testing and acceptance testing. We will soon come to that. We'll be able to understand the difference between this type of testing. Now, the problem as well with the VModel, there's something called verification and validation model. So here, we are verifying within the VModel, we are validating, we are verifying that, are we testing the right, are we developing the right product? And when we test it, we are validating that, we've built the right product. So, and that's why it's very important within the VModel, the developers will translate the business requirements or the system requirements, and then they will start writing the codes. Imagine they've written the wrong code, and nobody knows that they've written the wrong code. Of course, if they've written the wrong code, they will build the wrong system. Now, we testers will test. And of course, we test according to, we now look at the requirement. This is after they built the system, the wrong system. We now look at the requirement and we go, this is not how the system should be built. Simply because testing still comes at the end with the VModel. Remember, we don't do the code, the unit testing. The developers will do the unit testing here. And of course, as a developer, if you develop a software and you test your software, you won't even see that there's anything wrong with your software. And that's why testers are people who are dedicated to purely testing. Now, to solve all those problems, there's something called the Agile Methodology. In most cases, most people do Agile now. And when they say Agile, the functionalities are developed in iteration. It means you develop one functionality, you give yourself a space of 2 weeks, maybe 1, 2, 3. You give yourself a space of 2 weeks. Within that 2 weeks, that's the sprint. You test, they build, they develop the code, they build, you test. If there are defects, they retest. And that's just those functionalities. They might choose 3, 4 functionalities, 3, 4 functional areas, 3, 4 areas that they want to develop within an application. They develop that. They write the code. They develop. The developers do their testing. They give it to the testers to test. If there are defects, you raise the defects. They fix the defects. You do your retest. You do your regression testing. When all that is okay, you know those functionalities have been developed and tested, they move on another 2 weeks or another 3 weeks for another 2, 3 functionalities. So in doing that, you are building your software bit by bit, part by part. Whether it's integration testing you are doing well, You build the unit, you test the integration before you test it as a whole. But of course, you are testing bit by bit. And that's the only way I can use to explain this. So you are not testing a whole functionality at the end. You are not waiting for a test to be for a whole system to be tested. You are testing this by release. It's just a code drop to fix maybe 4 functionalities or 4 functional areas. And then you test. You build, you test, you retest, they fix, you retest. Once okay, that sprint has ended, then another sprint starts. So by doing that, the company will save money. Everybody knows what's going on. Everybody is carried along, not waiting till the end of the system has been developed before testing. And then in most cases, when you wait till the end, the tester might not even know what's going on. And there's one thing I hate. I'm testing something, and they're having a conversation, and you don't even know how the application works. Nobody likes to be in that situation at all. Now, testing methods. We've got what is called a static testing. When we are doing static testing from the beginning, it means you get your requirement. You are not even testing it, but you are reading the requirements. You're looking for typographical errors. Or you just underline it. What does the BA mean by this? So you are reading that document, and you can see mistakes already. And at the end of the day, you have a walkthrough with your BA, and you verify what she means by that. So by the time she explains the document to you, you've not even started testing, but you understand what she's trying to say. All you're having is a walkthrough. You're inspecting the document. You're having a walkthrough. Do you know what? I'll challenge anyone. Anything I say here, please note it down. I would like to be, I like people to ask me questions, and I like people to prove me wrong, because I can't remember the last time I did this, and of course I might make mistakes, and so I want people to ask me questions or go back and read it and ask me questions, and a challenging question, and it will make me have a look. And basically I just want a challenge. So please, after the class, feel free to read Guru 99. I always encourage people to do that, not just listen to what I say in class. I might make mistakes as well, and I need those mistakes to be corrected. Anyway, so I just had to say that. So as I was saying, within static testing, you are verifying the software. You are checking the document. You are checking the file to ensure that we are building the right product. So you look at the requirement. You've not even started testing, but you are just looking at the requirement. And there's something else called the dynamic testing. Dynamic means validation. Is a validation process, and this is what we do in most cases. There's code involved, but we are validating. We are validating that the application that we built is the right product, that the application that the developers have built is the right product. So you're looking through, you are testing. And the main function of a tester is to raise defects, to look. When you raise defects as a tester, if you test an application and you don't raise defects, you wouldn't be happy. I'm telling you, by the time you start testing, if you don't raise defects, they'll be thinking, oh, so the application is okay then. No. And of course, we have to go with the mindset that is not okay. No matter how they test it and they go, it's working perfectly. I always go with the mindset that no, it's not working, because you are a tester. You are supposed to see the minor defects that they can't see. And the more defects you see, I tell you, the better. You sleep better at night. But if you don't find defects, you'll be worried. So what do we mean when we say software testing types, manual testing? So manual testing is just a process of checking our software. The difference between the expected results and the actual results is the defect. So we are checking a software to see that it contains all the features, all the right functionalities the software is not doing what it's not supposed to do, and the software is doing what it's supposed to do according to the requirements. Sometimes you don't even have a requirement, and I thought I mentioned this last week. Sometimes you don't have a requirement at all, and you are a manual tester, you are supposed to test. Sometimes you might be the only tester where you work. You might not even, you won't be able to ask anyone a question. Well, you can ask the business users, but you as a tester, you need to know what to test if there is no requirement. And the requirements might be wrong. You need to be able to say, or verify. Without necessarily saying it's wrong, you can just verify. Oh, should this be this, you know? So manual tester, your main aim is to raise defects, find the defects. That's why you are called a tester. Execute, find the defects without using any tool, because you are physically logging on and testing. But the automation tester would actually automate a manual process. We use automation tools, but we are manual testers, so we stick to manual. Now, what sort of testing levels do we have? We have various testing levels. We have unit testing. When a developer starts developing, they build units, they build models, they build codes, tiny codes, a source code, a code that just affects a tiny, minute functionality. And of course, that will be combined to make, that will be integrated to make a component or something. But we don't do unit testing. Unit testing involves coding. So the developers will do the unit testing. But when it comes to integration, which is the process of connecting the tiny units that have been built into a component, into a model, into something big, into a system. I don't want to use the word system, but it's integrating two major components or two or more components. So you are testing the integration. Integration testing will be something like when you want to log in, for example, you click that button or register, login button. So when you're testing the website, for example, and it has a registration button, it has a login button, it has maybe email functionality, you send email, that's system integration testing. Because there are two systems integrating, interacting. So because when you press the button goes, when you press the button, it goes somewhere. Maybe it's a database, or you press that, or something like that. So it's not just one system, it's two systems. A standalone system, for example, would be a system test, whereby you are testing a system as a standalone application, a system that can do anything on its own. Say, for example, Word document, or that's the only thing I can think of from the top of my head. There are other standalone applications, but Word is a very good example. The desktop application is a standalone application. You are testing it on its own. It doesn't integrate with anything. It can do multiple functions on its own. And of course, it's Word. So that's a system. I can call that a system. So if you do testing like that, it's called system testing. But when you do test two systems that interact with one another in one way or the other, that's called integration testing. But we do system integration testing. We don't do unit test. So as a manual testing, you shouldn't be writing things like unit testing on your CV at all. It should be systems integration tester, systems tester, or user acceptance tester. Right, so system testing, like I previously said, the definition of that would be end-to-end testing. How does the system function from the beginning to the end? Testing the fully integrated application is also called an end-to-end scenario to ensure software works with all the intended targeted systems. And of course, you are verifying, checking the application for output. So when you do your testing, when you say end-to-end, end-to-end would be from the beginning to the end, the user journey. Say, for example, I want to write a document. What do? I open my Word. I click on it. I write my document. I increase the font. I reduce the font. I change the color. I change the background. All the journeys from the beginning to the end, end-to-end testing. You are testing that functionality. You are testing that the system works according to how it should work. Of course, you do your negative testing. The X button, for example, will say they should say X out of it. If you click on the X button or the exit button and your application doesn't exit, there's a problem somewhere. That's not the functionality. The functionality is X or exit. So it should be able to exit out of the application, and it doesn't exit. There's a problem there. Yeah, and so of course when we do that, we use our requirement document. But when you do user acceptance testing, it's actually according to the business requirements, or user acceptance testing. We do that according to the business requirements. And in most cases, this is what the user wants to see. So we've got users who use this application on a day-to-day basis. Maybe they want a shortcut, or they don't want to use the X button anymore to exit the application. They just want to click maybe the Y button, for example. I'm just using that as an example. But they don't want to click anymore. They want to do something else, according to exactly how they want it. The system might be a bespoke system, or a system that has been built before, but they want to, when I say bespoke, there's a system off-the-shelf application, for example. They bought this application and they've now developed this application for their own internal use. So instead of saying X out of this now, for example, instead of me to click X out of this, I don't want to click X to close my application. I want to click on this arrange to close my application. The business can say that's what they want. And that's why it's user acceptance testing. It's according to what the user specifically wants, the business. They are the owner of user accept UAT. They are the owner of UAT. And of course, we have to, in most cases, we obtain their sign-off. And why do we obtain their sign-off? We obtain the business sign-off simply because the user sometimes, they don't know what they want. 1 minute, they want the color of the font to be red. Next minute, they want it to be blue. So if you're working with business users, and at the same time, the business users are important, they are the owner of the business. They can say they don't want the project anymore. So, but because they are important, you have to know how to manage the business, manage the stakeholders. So no matter what, instead of them, once they change, as long as you get a sign-off. Because the danger in that is that you might end up testing the application and they realize, did we say we wanted red? I thought it was blue. But because you've obtained a sign-off, and in most cases, it's not the tester that obtains the sign-off. It's usually the BA. But some organizations will not even let the tester start testing or writing test cases if the requirement is not signed off. So it means the requirement must be signed off before the tester even has it, let alone writing test cases, let alone testing. So what I'm trying to say in essence is, you as a test analyst, you can always ask, supposing the business, the requirements are not signed off, you as a test analyst can always find out from VA, is the requirement signed off? And if some of it is actually one of your deliverables. Some organizations will say, no, if it's not signed off, we're not working on it. It depends on how strict the test manager is. But at the same time, you have to find a work balance. You have to find a way of balancing it. You can ask for sign-off not in a rigid way, maybe in a mild way. Or can I have an email sign-off? Email sign-off is what most people do, just to say, yes, I can clarify this is what we want, and, send it through an email and say, yes, this is all well documented, and give an email sign-off without physically signing a document. So you as a test analyst have to find out, you have to find out all what that means within your organization, whether they adhere to sign off or whether everything is documented. So when we talk about manual testing, we are mainly talking about functional testing. What does the application do? What is the functionality of that software? And this is the type of testing we also call black box testing. What's the functionality of that software? What's the software supposed to do? What are your expected outputs? What is your input? What is your output? What are you expecting? What's the software supposed to do? We have functional and non-functional, but the functionality of the application is what you really test as a manual tester. Of course, we do some non-functional testing as well, a bit, but majority of what we do as as a manual tester is functionality testing. We're just testing the functionality of that application. We're testing we can log in. We're testing we can submit. We're testing we can change the font. We're testing that the system can link to another system. We're testing basically the user journey. What can we do with this application? And what is the expected output? And then how can we break? We have to start thinking, what is the negative testing we can do within that? In most cases, you want to do negative testing. For example, if the box says a date, you have to put a date in like day, month, and year format. Day, DDYY, DDMMYYY. You can decide to put it in a different format and see whether it will accept it. The password box, for example, is just validating that it says it will do what it will do. And it shouldn't do what you shouldn't do. Now, when we talk about white box testing, that's when we talk about coding, programming. And in most cases, unit testing. But when we talk about black box testing, we're talking about functionality of that application, behavioral, input, and of course, based on your output will be based on the input. And of course, the black box testing, software testing methods, which testing evaluate the functionality of an application under test without knowing whether it's coded or not. And of course, the gray box testing is a combination of both the white and the black box testing. So also, I mentioned briefly the non-functional testing. And of course, non-functional testing will be things like, which as a manual tester, you hardly do non-functional testing. Correct me if I'm wrong. However, you can do things like compatibility testing, which is basically, you might be checking the compatibility of your browser to some website. So you might be doing things like cross-browser testing. You might be doing things like a bit of load, a bit of stress, a bit of security. And of course, in most cases, you might not need a tool. You might just need to see, oh, okay, if we log on, how long does the page take to load, things like that, without necessarily using a tool for performance, using a tool like Ranorex and all that. So in most cases, most manual tester, I as a manual tester, I still do manual testing up to today. As a manual tester, I hardly do anything. I do a bit of maybe load testing and see stress test. How many people can log on before the system starts slowing down, and how many minutes does it take for the system to boot? You know, things like that. And of course, that's non-functional. That's non-functional testing. So, I spoke last week, I also said something last week about test deliverables. So as a test analyst, your job when you get to work, before I talk about the deliverables, so depending on where they are in the company when you join them, But it's good to start testing from the beginning, as in when the project starts, you've just joined that company. That's the best thing to do. That's the best way to start. But sometimes when they say, oh, I've been to interviews before when they say to me, oh, so what stage do you like joining your project? And because of my experience, I say to them, it doesn't matter what stage I join. But of course, for someone who's starting, it's best to join from the beginning, because there you will attend workshops, you will attend the project kickoff meetings, you will attend everything. So if you're attending even the requirement gathering, you might attend all that as well. Because even when they are gathering requirements and you are in that meeting, you'll be glad you are there, because now you understand the software very well. The business analyst is there gathering the requirement. You as a tester, the more you listen to that, you'll be like, oh, you now know how to test the system. So it's best to start when the project is starting. But say, for example, if you join the project when they want to start testing, they've written their test cases and they want to start testing. You can't just jump there and start writing test cases. You need to read the requirement and understand. And of course, your role as a tester is to learn so many systems at the same time quickly and to understand. And of course, have an eye for details. So yours will be to quickly read the requirement and understand what you are supposed to do. So your role on a daily basis would be to write your test cases and to test. That's at that stage of testing. But if you start from the beginning, your role on a day-to-day basis would be to attend the workshops, to attend trainings. Workshops are good. They will train you on how the system should work. Remember, at the workshops, the business don't even know what they want. So now they are still discussing how the application would have this button, it will have that button, it should have this button. Now, when you listen to all that, you now have to start thinking of what your test preparation would be, what your strategy would be, what your planning would be. How would you plan testing? What sort of testing do you want to do? Some organizations will tell you this is the type of testing. They will have a strategy that defines the type of testing at an organizational level, the type of testing that they would do in case they are doing an upgrade project, for example, a project that exists. Maybe say, for example, we've got the Word document. I like using Word a lot. Or we've got the Windows. We've got Windows 2000. We now want to upgrade to Windows 2010. Or we want to upgrade to what's the next one after that? Windows 2010. Or we've got Windows 4 or Windows 5. We now want to upgrade to the next level, which is Windows 5, if there's anything like that. Now, the test strategy is a high-level document. It will tell you, in most cases, it's not even developed by a project manager. I don't believe that, and I don't agree to that. The test strategy is usually an organizational thing, and the words can be used. Organizations use the test strategy when they mean a test plan. But a strategy would define the type of testing you would do when you want to do an upgrade project, for example. Like I said, upgrading from Windows XP to Windows Explorer. No, sorry, not Explorer. The next one, Edge, is it? Yeah. So from XP to Edge, or from Millennium to Edge. Edge is what we're using now. Yeah, from 10 to Edge or something like that. Yeah, so your strategy will define that upgrade project. Your strategy would also define when you are doing an enhancement, what sort of testing do you do? Your strategy would also define when you are doing like building a new website altogether. A new site is not an upgrade, it's a new site. It should define things like that. And of course, you should know that when you're building a new system, you have to build a manual with that, because there's no previous version. Or even if you're upgrading a new system with some enhancement and it's different from the functionalities of what it was before, you have to start creating manuals to train people how to use it. So your strategy will document something like that. Or your test plan will document specifically what you are testing, what sort of test you want for a particular project. What test are you conducting? what is in scope, what is out of scope. What I mean by that is, what functionalities are you testing? Say, for example, you are building a massive house. What are we testing? Are we testing the house and the content, or we are just testing the house and without the content? So your in scope will be what you are testing. Your out of scope, oh, I'm testing this house. I'm not testing the garage, and I'm not testing the front garden, something like that. So your in scope will say what you are testing, what's in scope of that test. Your out of scope will say, no, we are not testing this functionality. And then also your test plan will talk about whether we are developing, whether we know the system has known defects, for example, some functionalities that were not working before. Are we fixing those functionalities, or we are just testing new functionalities? Are we doing an enhancement? When I say enhancement, it means new build, something to improve the system. Are we just testing that? Are we enhancing the system, or we are just doing like for like? So your test plan will define all that. Your test plan will talk about your scope of testing. Your test plan will talk about roles and responsibilities. The BA, what is she doing, or what is he doing? What is roles and responsibility? The tester is responsible for testing. The project management, what's the project manager, who he is and what his role is. Now you have the business, who will sign off the test plan within the business. Who are the key stakeholders? What is the defect management process? We'll come to defects maybe in the next class. What's the defect management process? Who is involved in that? Who organizes the defect? How long would it take us to fix defect severity 1? And I'll come to severity and priority in a minute. How long will it take us to fix defect severity 1 or defect severity 4? Would it take a day? Would it take 2 days? So remember, we call this a test plan. It means before we start testing at all, we have a plan in place. Testing is not, most people believe, and most business, which is annoying, they believe testing is just turn up and test. Let's just check. No, testing is a process, because you have to plan for testing, you have to write your test plan. You have to document everything for testing. You don't just jump in and test. You have to estimate how long it will take to test. Your manager would see you at work and say, oh, they've given you your requirements. How long do you think it will take you to test that? And you as a test analyst have to be able to estimate whether it will take 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, or 1 week. Now, within your test plan, you have your estimate. They've given you 2 weeks test period. So testing is supposed to be done within this week and the next 2 weeks. So whether you're just doing integration test, system integration testing, or you're doing your regression testing, or you're doing your retest and your regression testing, everything has to fit within that 2 weeks window. So you as a test analyst have to know how long it will take you to test. Please go and read up more on everything I'm talking about, then you will understand more, just in case you don't understand. Now, also within your test plan, you'll have to document, oh, where we are keeping the test cases. Are we keeping it? Are we using Excel? We've done traceability matrix, for example, at the beginning of this class. Are we using Excel? Where are my defects stored? What are the documents I'm referring to? A lot of questions you'll be asking, and the answers, you have to answer them in the test plan. In most cases, it's the test lead that will write the test plan, but it's good for test analysts to understand what a test plan is as well, and how to write one. Even if it might not be a 100-page test plan, but even if it's bullet points, it might be 2 pages, 4 pages, as long as there is a plan. So that everybody knows. It's not when you now start testing, you raise a defect, you'll be like, oh, so who is fixing this defect? Is it the developer, or do we have outside provider, or who is fixing? You won't start doing that. You would have planned that this person is fixing any defect raised within this functional area, depending on how big your system is. Any defect raised within, say for example, I'm testing my car, any defect that I find, anything wrong with the engine, I will direct that to Mr. John. Anything wrong with the wheels, that goes to Mr. Lancome. anything within the roof is going to this developer. So you would have documented all that so that when you raise your defect within your defect management tool, you know who to assign it to, because you've planned for all that. You've documented all that in the test plan. And that's why we plan before we start testing. It's a process. It's not just turn up, look at the system, and test. Now, when we talk about severity and priority, I think it should have been like this. Anyway, the priority is usually associated with the requirements. So when you get your requirements from your BA, she would have said priority 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, the priority is the impact of that functionality to the business. The priority is usually, so in the requirement, for example, the one I sent, I said must have. You cannot change that. Even when you write your test cases, it must have. You can't change it to could have, which is priority 2. Must have always is must have. You did not set the priority, so you cannot change that priority level. The priority was set by the BA and the business, because that's the priority. That's what they think is important to their application. That's the impact of that test case to the business. Now, the severity is usually set by the test analyst. The test analyst will decide that, this defect, and the only time we talk about severity for test analysts is only when we talk about defects. Before you raise defects, we don't have severity. We only have priority, because priority comes from the BA, and we don't change it. If it's 4, it's 4. It means it's low. If it's 1, it's 1. You don't have a right to change it. It comes with the requirement. But the only time we now start talking about the severity is when we raise a defect. When we raise a defect, we need to put a severity. The severity is the impact of that defect on that functionality, on that application. And that is set by the test analyst. Remember that. They will always ask you what's the difference between severity and priority. You, as a test analyst, set the severity at the point when you raise your defect. But the priority is set by the business. So you have an application, you have a defect that has a priority 1, which is high, and severity 4, which is low. Because you feel the impact to the application is not much. So you've given it 1. Now, wherever there's a conflict with regards to priority, it's what the business says. Remember, the business are the ones that sponsors this project. They are the ones that sponsor the project. They are the stakeholders. They are the business owners. They are everything. And they are powerful. So once there's a dispute between even severity, they can come together and say, oh, why is it severity 4? Or why is it 1? It should be 4. At the end of the day, it's their software. You are just the tester. Always remember that. Now, like I said before, I said my test plan is a document which contains a plan of all testing activities. Now, I'll give another assignment tonight. To those of you who did the assignment, thank you very much, but I'll give another assignment tonight. And to be honest, I don't really mind if you use the internet for this assignment. But I'll give another assignment. Sorry, this class is assignment-based. If you want to really be involved, you need to do the assignment. So I'll give another assignment for tonight. Now, as I was saying, I just remembered that I need to say that. So a test plan, like I said, is a document that contains all testing activities. It means at every phase, let me go back to my slide. So, I remembered speaking about this. I said this to say, I said that, what I said earlier, to say this. At every stage of the software development lifecycle, there is an activity that you need to perform. Yeah, there's an activity performed at every stage. At the requirement gathering stage, there's an activity performed. At the design stage, there's an activity performed. At the building stage, there's an activity performed. At the test stage, there's an activity performed as well. We are more concerned at the requirement stage and at the testing stage. I would say that simply because we deal with requirements, and the reason I gave you the test case last week, I said go and write test cases, is because if you're a tester and you can write test cases, that's just the fundamental. Once you can write test cases, then you don't have any problem. So if you learn to write your test cases, you are okay. If you can write your test scenario, look at the requirement, write your test scenario and your test cases, then you can be a tester. And I don't want a situation whereby anyone will struggle with writing test cases in this class, especially when you've listened to this. Test cases is the easiest thing you can write. So I said that to say this. At the testing stage, there are some things you'll be reporting on. At the planning stage, there are some things you'll be reporting on as a test analyst. At the testing stage, for example, if you are testing, there are typically some things you'll be reporting on. You want to report on your number of test cases that you've tested. You want to report on the number of defects that you've raised. You have 100 test cases. How many have you run? How many did you run? How many passed? How many failed at that stage of testing? Because you are testing, that's all you are talking about. Now, I need to go back to my slide. So I was talking about the test plan and also test efforts. When we talk about test efforts, what do we mean? It means how many testers will be able to test. How long would it take us to complete our testing? Is it by one? If one tester tests 100 test cases, how long will it take one tester? If there are 2 testers, how long will it take them? What's the effort involved? How many days? How long? Some people calculate the effort by hours. I don't know how to calculate by hours. I know how to calculate by days. But of course, it's just test efforts. How long? And of course, as a test analyst, you need to be able to know, oh, how long will it take you to test? Now, I will say one thing to people. It's best to underestimate than to overestimate. And I said this because most cases when your manager says, how long would it take you to test? You as a test analyst will think, I better say I can finish it tomorrow, for example. If you say tomorrow, you end up struggling. Well, it's best to if you look at it and you feel, rule of thumb is you do 7 test cases in a day. In most cases, if you're an experienced test analyst, you know you can do more than that. But it's best to calculate 7 test cases in a day, for example. We've got 47 test cases in all. That's 7 days. And of course, minus Saturday, Sunday. So the whole of Monday to Friday, Monday, Tuesday, the following week. So you can say, oh, by Wednesday I'll finish. Well, of course, maybe you finish by Monday. But what I'm saying is it's best to overestimate than to underestimate. But say, for example, those 49 test cases, you say, oh, I'll finish tomorrow. Meanwhile, in the morning, you're already struggling. It will look as if you can't even meet your target. But if you've estimated properly, they've given you a 2 weeks window to test. Calculate how long it will take to test, and I can teach you that after when we finish doing what we do. But test estimation is really what a test lead will do, but it's just good to know various ways of estimation, of how to estimate tests. But what I'm saying is, it's just best to make sure that you don't say, oh, I can finish within a week, oh, I'll do it within a week. Meanwhile, 1 week down the line, we are struggling. And then it looks as if, oh, you can't even meet tight deadlines. And remember, in your interview, you said you can meet tight deadlines. You're a problem solver. You are this, you are that. So I would want to start going through the questions right now. I don't know if I've got questions. If you still have any questions, please start typing your question into the keypad, so I can actually into the message pad, so I can actually answer the questions. Okay. Iteration period, is it all the testing that will be done, i.e. system testing, system integration testing, and unit testing? Oh, that's a very good question. Okay, I would like to say this. If you are so within an organization, if you're a system tester, then you're a system tester. You cannot do system testing, system integration testing, and actually you can, but you can do system integration testing and system testing within an organization because they are similar, but you cannot be a system tester and then be a UAT tester within an organization. I haven't seen that before. So within the sprint that I said, within the iteration period, no, you're not doing all the three testing. You're not doing the system testing, the system integration testing, and UAT testing. You might be doing the system testing and the system integration testing, but I will assure you not the UAT testing. In an organization where you are the system tester or the system integration tester, they would have the business as the UAT testers. But in an organization where they have dedicated UAT testers, they are just the UAT testers. It means they test at the business level. So within the iteration period, what you are testing is various functionalities, various functionalities, but you are not testing. It's not different testing that you are doing. So you are just testing. Oh, we can do this. You've gathered a few functionalities for that sprint period, maybe for 2 weeks. So you develop. You test, they develop, you test, you do your retest, and then you do your regression testing, and that's it. And then you pick another functionality again. So the next question here also states, can I explain static testing? So static testing is just testing a document. There's no testing at all involved. It's just reading a document and going through the typos. Say, for example, they've given you a 50-page requirement and you don't understand. So when you're having your walkthrough, when you are going through with the BA, you're asking the BA some questions, you're having a walkthrough. Sorry, but I don't understand. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking it says I should be able to log on using the red button. Is that red or should it be blue? So when you're asking questions like that, you see your BA in the morning and you want to understand the requirement. You don't even have a pen. You're just asking questions. You're brainstorming. You're asking questions regarding the requirements she's written down. Simply because maybe you don't understand or you want it to be clear or stuff like that. And that's what is called static testing. You are not really testing. You're not testing anything at that time. All you're doing is just asking questions. Questions regarding the requirements. Because when you are in a working place and you don't understand the requirement, the person you speak to is the business. It's either the business or the BA. You ask them questions. So that's static testing based on what you've read in the requirements. So can you give us an example of verification and validation? So when we validate, we testers, we validate that something can be our expect. So we validate that the requirement says this. We are validating, we are testing. So when we test something, so they've written a requirement according to, they built a system according to the requirement. But so we have to now validate that requirement that they've written is actually what it says, is doing what it says it should do. So the example I can give is when we do our testing, we are validating that the requirement has been, the system has been built according to the requirement. Is black box testing the same thing as static testing? Well, static testing might be part of black box testing, but black box is more functional testing, it's physically testing. Static, like I said, is just reading the documents. Of course, I would say static testing is part of black box testing, but they are not the same thing. Is test analyst the same with software tester? So your role as a your role might be a test analyst, a manual tester, software tester, tester without the analyst. Yes, they are all the same thing. To be 2 weeks interval. What about stand-up meetings? So we have stand-up meetings. We have stand-up meetings, and stand-up meetings are usually every day, 15 minutes. So within your sprints, you have functional areas that you do. You have what you are testing within your sprint period. The stand-up is just a daily scrum. So you come every day, you will say what you did yesterday, what you intend to do today, and if there are any blockers. It's usually for 15 minutes when you have your stand-up meeting. So all you just talk about is, oh, I tested this, I tested that, there's no blocker, and that's it, and today I intend to do this. You don't go there discussing the defect, or some people go there to talk about a main issue if there's an issue that everybody needs to brainstorm, but it doesn't usually take more than 10, 15 minutes. Right, if you want to be part of there's going to be an internship after this training, as in maybe it will take 6 weeks for this training or 8 weeks. I don't know how long it will take, depending on how quick we cover the courses. If you want to be part of the internship, which is actually intense, you have to do all the assignments. You have to attend the classes, and so. But what I'm trying to say is that if you do the internship, most people who do the internship end up getting jobs. So it depends on how much you want this, without using that word serious. So it depends on how much you want it. Somebody who attends class all the time, who does all the assignments, for example, will be chosen over somebody who doesn't do the assignments. And that's just the main thing. So I just want to emphasize and encourage everyone to do the assignments. And that's all I will say as far as that is concerned. So I'm still reading through the questions I did not get. Right, okay. I think somebody was just, when you overestimate, does it give us time to produce more test cases? No, it doesn't give you. So when you overestimate, it doesn't give you more time to produce more test cases. It just makes you look as if you reached your target. You did what you needed to do within the deadline. You did what you needed to do within your deadline. So they've given you a deadline for next week Thursday, and you've estimated to say you can finish on Wednesday, for example. And you finish on that Wednesday. It's better than saying, give an estimate to say I'll finish tomorrow, and then you are struggling, and then it looks as if you can't even stick to your targets, you've given a deadline. You've been given a deadline, although the deadline is next week, but you said you finish tomorrow. So if you're saying you finish tomorrow, you have to be sure you are finishing tomorrow, not that you've underestimated and then tomorrow you are struggling. Right. So which job is easiest to get, a tester or a BA role? I like this. I'm a tester, so I'll tell you testing is the easiest thing you can do. But of course, the BA will tell you BA is the easiest thing you can do. But I'm a test analyst, so I feel tester is easy for me, not the BA role. But of course, the BA will tell you it's easier to get the BA role. But I think it depends on your preference. If you've attended the BA class as well, you should be able to make a judgment. But I'll tell you, the tester role is easier to get. So alpha testing is done at work site, and beta is done at client site. Not sure about delta testing. Never heard of. Okay, sorry, I was just reading that. Neither have I heard about delta testing. And can I say, that's why I gave you that website, Guru 99, I would say is almost the best website to read. There are so many people who've written about testing up there. If you read about testing, there are so many different types of testing, maybe up to 200. But in the world of testing, I don't think I've tested more than 7 various types of testing, or maybe 8 or 9. But you have about 200 different types of testing. So that's just to show you that there's a lot, and you can't read everything, you can't believe or trust everything you read online. So Guru 99 is the best place to start, guru99.com. So I didn't understand the first assignment. Can you kindly send it to me? I cannot personally send you the first assignment. If you're on the group, you would get it, or you can scroll up to it, or if you're not on the course group, you can message the admin to request a copy of the assignment. Yeah, assignment 2 will be published. Now, when would assignment 2 be published? Yeah, assignment 2 will be published on Telegram. So keep an eye out for that. You said different users testing you. Oh no, I didn't say that. That's not me. Sorry. I just don't want to deviate. I never said anything about that, right? Okay. I think that's about the iteration. I just want to be sure that. Sorry, I'm scrolling through the questions and. Yeah, VModel diagram. Well, I can say, okay, you mentioned, yeah, like I said, we'll be using DevOps at some point. And can I just say, the DevOps is actually the test management tool that I'll be using. So, and what I intend to do is, I've given the first assignment. If you write your test cases, if you understand how to write test cases, now you'll be writing the same test cases, because we are still going to be using gifttreats.com website. That's what we'll be using to write our test cases in DevOps. And that's why I give that assignment initially, so that people will understand how to write test cases. So it's the same thing. We will be doing the Azure DevOps soon. I think it's the class after the next. I'm not too sure, depending on what we've got to cover. But by the time we are doing DevOps, we get to the writing test cases for the gifttreats.com website. That's what we'll be testing. We'll be writing those test cases in the DevOps, and I will show you how to write your test cases in DevOps, how to run your test cases, and how to run it, pass it, fail it, attach your screenshot to it. And that's why I gave the first assignment, which is writing test cases. Requested that, can I share the best answer, first assignment? If you were in my last class, you will understand. Okay, no, don't let me say that. I'll just share. Okay, so I'm sharing based on request for this one. Now, if you can see my screen, just type into the keypad. So the test scenarios for here. So this is the, yeah, okay. So this is the requirement. I've written this requirement to say it shall be possible to load the gifttreats.com via the Internet Explorer icon. And this is what I wrote. So I've written this four highlighted requirements. And I said, write your test scenarios. And in my last class, you can go and listen to the video, I said something about scenarios. I said with scenarios, you have to say what you want to test. What are you trying to test? What are your testables? What are your testability, if there's a word like that? So it means from this requirement description, all you need to do is to look at it and what do you want to test? You ask yourself that question. And those will form your scenarios. And I also said your scenario, you can say, this one says it shall be possible to load the GiftTreat via website via the Internet Explorer icon. So what you need to do is to verify that I can load the gift, or that the user can load the Giftrit website via the Internet Explorer icon, or test that. It's best to even say test that I can load, or test that the user can load the Giftrit website via the Internet Explorer. Or you can say test that I can, the second one will say test that I can view the home page, because that's what you want to test or verify. Remember, we are talking about verification. So we are verifying, we testers will verify that the right application has been built. So remember, this website has been built. In most cases, what you do as a tester is you are testing an application that has been built. So that's all you are testing. You are testing that the application that has been built is being built according to the specification. So with this description, requirement description, all you are saying, your test scenario, your high-level test scenarios would say what you want to test. This one says it shall be possible to view the register button. So test that I can view the register button and I can register via the registration button will be your test scenario. And then your test cases will be how to do just that. Your test cases are specific instructions which tells you how to do something. How to log in. Click on the icon, Internet Explorer icon. Your web browser should be open. Type in www.giftrit.com. Giftrit homepage should be open. Click on the registration button. How do you register? Click on the registration button. Step 2, input your name, your password, then click on the register button. You shall be registered. So all this, your test cases are your steps. There are various instructions which tells you how to do what you are supposed to do, what you are supposed to test. Whilst your test scenario is just a high level, not instruction. Your test scenario is just high level. It will tell you what you want to test. And then your test case is how you want to test it. I hope I hope that's understandable. Okay. So any other question? What is the role title for an entry level into testing? Sorry, I don't understand what that question means. Role title. It can be any title. If it's the job title you mean. It can be a test analyst, it can be a software tester, it can be anything. I think it depends on organizations. They can call you a systems tester, they can call you a systems test analyst, they can call you, please can you send your slides? I would not necessarily send the slides, but you can watch the video because everything we say on here is being recorded. So I will listen to the video or I'll watch it over and over again if I don't understand. And of course, if you read guru99.com, it talks about everything I've said here. And like I said, you can ask me questions. Any other questions? If there's no other question, I'll call it a day.